Finally fucking ready. Greetings, comrades, brothers and sisters, friends and enemies, if you're listening. Welcome to pilot episode 7 of the Evening Moon podcast. Of course they listen. Everyone listens to this podcast. About 7 people listen to it.
And of the 7 people, you have enemies already.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
You guys are impressive.
Is that 7 people including us 4 though, right?
Probably, yeah. That's
not
include me.
You don't listen
I
to
don't
the
listen
podcast?
Well, I'm the only one out of the 4 of us. Oh, and Kadeem,
No, I listen.
to it.
You know I listen.
Yeah. I have to listen to it all the way through to edit out all of our liable comments and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, what did you say on the last episode which made me want to stop listening straight away?
I don't know.
You said
Were we
something...
horrible like Star Trek?
No. You said something right at the beginning, and even Steve was like, why would you say that for?
Oh, I said excelente.
That's it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right, so let's go on with it. As you probably can tell already, that we are joined, as usual, by the illustrious Steve Sweeney.
Hello.
We're also joined for the second time running by Ceren Sagir
Yes, hello.
and the old favourite, don't know why I'm saying the old favourite, Kadeem Simmonds.
I'm an old favourite, you know. I came on, I killed it, I left. Mic drop.
Excellent. So, first, today we're going to talk about the north of Ireland. We're going to talk about football violence. But first,
Brexit.
we are going to talk about... not Brexit. Let's
Brexit.
never talk about Brexit ever again.
Brexit.
We're going to talk about knife crime.
Yes.
Jaren, you wrote a story.
I get it. Because I'm black, so about knife crime. Okay, cool.
Today is March the 13th, and in today's paper, Jaren, you've written a story about knife crime.
I have, yeah. I mean, knife crime's been something that's in the limelight for the past couple of weeks, especially so. I mean, it has been a problem that's been going on for a very long time. But there's been a lot of attention on it recently, and people have been talking about reduction in police numbers and other causes of knife crime, but people aren't really talking about what I believe is the root causes, which is the budget cuts. Austerity, yeah.
I disagree.
We'll get to that in a minute.
We'll get to that.
Let Jared say the story, and then we'll get to that.
No, yeah, you're right, so...
I mean, yesterday, Ofsted, which is the inspector body for schools, produced a report, and it was talking mostly about exclusions and its connection to knife crime, but it did also talk a little bit about how cuts to local authorities, particularly in early help and prevention services, have been linked to increasing knife crime. Councils are dealing with increasing demand to support vulnerable young children, but spending per person on the services has fallen by over 60% since 2009.
Which is pretty grim.
It is pretty grim. And school teachers are also saying that they don't actually have the training to deal with circumstances. For example, if a child comes into school with a knife, or if an incident does take place in school, they don't have the training or the means to deal with it. Well, Ofsted have actually said that even if it does happen, sometimes schools are a bit reluctant to report it to the police. So they don't want to be seen as like a school with high numbers of kids bringing knives to school.
Right.
Or chances of an incident taking place.
Schools are under massive pressure anyway, aren't they?
Yeah, of course. And the budget's actually, the spring budget's going to be announced today by Philip Hammond. And he's done a pretty shitty job of providing schools with the funding that they need. In the last budget, he announced like little extras for schools for things like maybe pens and notebooks and stuff like that. But even that was taken from other funding from education and reallocated into that. So it's there's a massive emergency in the education system in terms of funding at the moment.
I think there's lots of different factors for this rise in knife crime.
Yeah.
If indeed there is a rise in knife crime.
I was going to ask that. Is there anything to suggest that the knife crime has actually risen? I mean, I'm not aware of the statistics, but I don't know whether it's risen or it's become more high profile or
there are statistics. I don't know them off the top of my head. I know that since January this year, there's been over 21 deaths related to stabbings
Yeah.
this year alone. And again, last year, similar statistics were coming out in February about how a really high number of incidents were taking place. And there are statistics to suggest that it's not an all-time high,
Yeah.
but it is a recent high, which is just as alarming.
I mean, yeah, to be fair, 21 deaths is 21 too many, isn't
Yeah,
it, no
of
matter
course.
what.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a stabbing just along from the street where we used to live together, wasn't there?
It was. Yeah.
And,
yeah.
That's pretty grim. Because you hear about these things all the time, don't you? But you never expect it to be like a street down from you, is it? Do you?
That was it.
But there's a lot of like, so what do you think? Like, Kadeem, you said that you disagree, but we'll get to that in a second. What I want to talk about first is what do we think are the reasons for this, if there is a rise? But there's 21 people have died this year. What are some of the so obviously some of the reasons must be police cuts and austerity.
Yeah.
Austerity has to be the driving factor behind it. I think Ceren pointed out that there's been these massive cuts to schools' budgets. I think they're under unprecedented pressure. The worst cuts that have been in the history of education. That has an obvious knock-on effect. Also, council budgets being cut, budgets for youth services. And other kind of support services. I mean, this is for young people now. Look at the future for young people. They face an education system that's pitted against them, where if they want to go on to they face tuition fees. If they want to do things in their community, all of those services have been closed and shut down. There's pressure on housing. There's pressure on every single aspect of life. And for young people, what do they have to do? Where are the services that were there, that were once there when I was younger? We had all that kind of thing, and those things are being cut and taken away, and there are consequences for those cuts, obviously.
Exactly, yeah. These kids have got nothing to do, and there's cuts, and like you said, things that are straining on their family, are straining on society, and that's affected the kids as well. So it's not just that kids are horrible and stabbing each other. There's much more to this, isn't there?
But kids have always been stabbing each other. Like, this isn't a 2019 thing, not 2018 thing. Steve, I'm sure in your day, people were stabbing
Way
each other.
back in your day.
Way back in my
But people were stabbing each other. I understand that austerity and stuff like that may be increasing it, but you get a situation where everyone's like, oh no, because of this, because of austerity. It's like, you're really not looking at the root causes, and the root cause is that it's been going on for decades. No one knows how to solve it. But
what are the root causes, though? That's the
root cause
thing,
is that humans are complete arseholes.
I don't agree with that.
But in the sense that part of it is, somewhere over the last maybe 2 decades, the mindset of young people has kind of changed in the sense that, again, Steve, back in your day, perhaps if me and you got into a fight, we'd fight and then we'd walk away and that was it. Whereas today, these fights then lead to someone going, well, do you know what? I feel disrespected. I need to go get a knife and, retaliate. And it's like, well, hold on, what has changed? And perhaps that is austerity. Perhaps that is, kids have nothing to do now compared to when they had, 20, 30 years ago because of cuts to all, there's no... I grew up in a lot of after-school clubs and stuff like that. Those aren't really around anymore because they've had to be cut. Exactly. So I can understand that point of view, but I just find it really frustrating when I'm seeing these politicians go, oh, well, it's because of all the violent video games and the violent music and stuff like that.
That's always such bollocks.
It is.
And it's always been the case that they've tried to blame any kind of...
Well, Elvis
society's ill.
But then,
trusted his hips.
I don't know if you guys have seen the Drill MP music video. If not, perhaps link it and stuff like that. It's basically this artist. So recently, you've had people blame this current music called drill music, which is kind of an offshoot of grime or rap or stuff like that. But they're blaming this drill music for highlighting this lifestyle, this culture, and this drill music video basically, it's the words of MPs talking about stabbing each other or doing X, Y, and Z to each other. And it's like, how are you blaming drill music when this is how you guys beat each other, And that's where politicians aren't going to look at themselves and go, well, actually, we play a small part in this as well. And like I said, I said I disagree. It's not so much that austerity isn't part of the problem, because it clearly is. But you know, when Stephen Lawrence got stabbed, you know, that was one as a racist thing. People have been stabbed for years. People, I don't know many people of my age that have been stabbed, but I know people who would carry a knife and stuff like that, because it's just that they were told this is what you do. You carry a knife to protect yourself.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you know, I don't want to downplay things, but it does feel a bit like there's a moral panic going on. And I mean, obviously, whatever's happened, this knife crime is shocking, and it should. We should be looking at ways to get rid of it, but it does, in a way, feel like there's a bit of a moral panic. It's a bit like we need something to talk about, so let's talk about this constantly. But
There's
I think
there's that video of this school fight that happens quite near me in Ilford, and I think this MP was like, "Oh my day, the kids of today," and it's like, this is a school fight. Schools have been fight like, if your school was a fight in another school, then your school had nothing to do after school. You know, there's always been school rivalries. This isn't a new thing.
But isn't it slightly different now that people are fearful, and they're fearful because, you know, they don't have, you know, these are areas that have been decimated with cuts to youth services, with cuts to community services. All of those things, the safety net that people had, has been snatched away from them. So they have this kind of poverty of hope, and you know they you know there's nothing left for young people anymore. The majority of the victims of knife crime tend to be under the age of 21. These are young people who you know who once had those kind of things in place that have been taken away, and these are happening in areas that have been stricken and hammered hardest by austerity. So I think the way to tackle knife crime is by tackling austerity. You have to deal with that as the root cause of the issue. You know, you can't cut community services, youth services, education without there being consequences, without people, you know, young people having no hope, and they're frightened. People are frightened. That's why people carry knives, is because they're fearful of of what's happening to their communities. And these are communities that were formed, you know, used to be tight knit communities where people look out for each other, and you know, in many and they still do. You see the responses to, you know, when a young person or somebody is killed by knife crime, the community rallies around and sticks together. So that kind of thing's there, but I think you have to tackle austerity and poverty.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think what you were saying is that the knife crime existed before
Of course it did.
austerity and stuff, and it's generally because society treats people like shit and doesn't care about them, and so they're in a shit situation. And like you said, it's quite interesting actually. I don't think people think about that very much. You carry a knife because you feel under threat, generally, maybe. I would think that's one of the reasons why people would be carrying knives, because they also feel like they're going to get into shit.
Yeah. It's a weird one though, because you also see more and more people hide knives. So the whole thing is that, well, you know, if the police, so everyone says if you increase stop and search, that can solve the problem. Actually, it's not, because people are smarter. So what you do now is that, by the way, don't get any ideas, but you know, it's instead of carrying the knife with you, you kind of hide it in the area that you're going to be around. So if anything kicks off, you know, it's behind
the mailbox.
And so that's why a lot of police are now searching bushes and stuff like that, because the chance that you might actually find a knife in there. And people are saying, well then, you know, why don't you increase the sentences for someone caught with a knife? While I feel that the sentences are really, really weak, increasing sentences, again, isn't going to help, because these guys, they go to jail and their friends are already there. Or, you know, it ups their street cred. So you spend 2 years in jail, you come out, and now all of a sudden, yeah, I survived jail, and you're going to keep on doing the exact same thing. And, you know, it probably does feed into that, you know, there's no youth services, but also there's no jobs.
Exactly, that's the other, you
know,
all
these,
opportunity.
You know, I worked at McDonald's for 6 years, you know, but with all these, and why McDonald's isn't closing, you know, all these high street stores that are closing were the high street stores that you would work in as a kid before you go on to other employment. Now they're all closing. It's like, well, I'm 16, 17, I have no money, I can't get a job. When I do try and get a job, they say I need experience, so I'm just going to hang out with these kids who sell drugs, and all of a sudden you're in that lifestyle and you're not getting out of it.
Making money.
Yeah.
Well, this is a deep topic, deeper than we're able to solve anyway. So shall we move on to the next topic? Do we have like a jingle to go in between the topics?
Oh.
Was that it? That was it.
So we should get one for next time. That's a great idea.
I was gonna
I've got a
say-
bell on my desk. So
Do you?
know.
Ding.
Steve can hum the Star Trek tune because he knows that quite well. So go on, Steve, hum along
What?
the Star Trek theme tune.
Okay, let's move on. We have Steve. You're going to talk to us about a story from the north of Ireland. The north of Ireland has been in the news quite a lot recently. Do you notice I've got to really concentrate not to say Northern
Yes,
Ireland
good.
when you're around?
Yeah.
Fill us in on what's going on in the north of Ireland.
Okay, so really, I guess the hit the headlines this week with the Northern Ireland Secretary Karen Bradley, who in the House of Commons, when she was talking about some of the legacy cases, so the cases involving British soldiers and British forces during the Troubles, she said that their acts were not criminal and that they were fulfilling their duties in a dignified and appropriate way.
So basically, she was saying that the soldiers killing innocent civilians was not.
They weren't criminal acts, and this quite rightly caused uproar within the community amongst the relatives of victims of British soldiers during the Troubles period, and it comes ahead of tomorrow's decision.
Today is the 16th. No, today's the 13th of March.
So the
So this will be
14th
the
of March.
14th.
So there will be the announcement of a decision by Northern Ireland's Public Prosecution Service over whether 18 soldiers will be charged and face criminal charges for their role in the Bloody Sunday killings in Derry of 1972. These were killings where 13 people, innocent, unarmed, were shot dead in Derry at a civil rights protest. British paratroopers opened fire. It took a long time. There was smears, cover up. The British state lied, as they have done in most of the legacy cases, and said that they were fired upon by IRA gunmen that fired the first shot, and that the people that they killed were members of the IRA. It turns out, perhaps unsurprisingly, but for those that have been fighting for justice, that this was not the case. These were 13 unarmed civilians. Many of them were shot dead. There were 100 rounds fired, 100 shots fired. Many of them were killed whilst going to the aid of people that were lying wounded as well. In 1998, the Savile inquiry opened. It took 12 years, but he concluded that the British soldiers had lost control on the day and that their killings were unjustified and unjustifiable. He concluded that all of the people that were killed, there were 13 shot dead on the day, another died 4 months later from his wounds in hospital. 14 victims were killed, were innocent, and it paved the way then. It led to an apology from David Cameron, who was then Prime Minister, who unreservedly apologised. And it opened the door for these investigations. So in 2010, a report was made to the Police Service of Northern Ireland, and they carried out a murder investigation. And we'll hear the decision, the long-awaited decision, tomorrow. Now, again, this decision has caused some degree of consternation. The Tory MPs, mainly the military wing of the Tory party, all of them officer class, and in the Lords, have said it would be outrageous to bring charges against these people. Well, this is incredible. And Karen Bradley's comments were, to say that they weren't crimes, almost prejudges the outcome.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's what she's basically saying. She's the official government spokesperson for the North of Ireland, and she's said what the British soldiers did. I mean, you talk to people like Danny, the relatives of Danny Teggart, who had 10 bullets riddled through his body in Ballymurphy, and to say that they were, fulfilling their duties in a dignified and appropriate way, but also to say that they're not crimes ahead of what could potentially be criminal charges, just gives the attitude of the British state towards that horrendous period where they were carrying out state killings with impunity. So you look at, the Bloody Sunday, the decision tomorrow is just one. Earlier this week, the inquest into the Ballymurphy killings, which happened in the August before Bloody Sunday, August of 1971, a 3-day killing spree by the same troops that were involved in Bloody Sunday. Not many people know about this one. It's not as prominent, but this was in West Belfast. One of the generals who was in charge of operations that day had to admit that 6 of the 10 victims, 6 of the 10 people that were killed, were not members of the IRA. They said the same thing again. And they said the same thing. They said that they were shooting. Operational note said that they had inflicted many casualties amongst IRA, IRA members. None of them were members of the IRA. Yeah, and they had to admit that at least 6 of them, weren't.
So Ballymurphy wasn't a priest killed at Ballymurphy as well, or is that Bloody Sunday?
Both,
or both?
Both. Yeah. I mean, these are. I mean, going to the aid of people that were lying wounded, they had bullets riddled into them. Bullets fired into at them indiscriminately. These were soldiers on the rampage. These were state killings. I mean, this is incredible to suggest that these people shouldn't face charges just because of the matter of time that's passed. That time has only passed because the state covered it up.
Yeah, exactly.
The state lied about it. The state carried did everything that they could to smear the people that had died as terrorists. They did all of these terrible things, and it's only right now that they face charges. These are the same people, the same people that are acting. They did it in the north of Ireland. They did it in Afghanistan. They did it in Iraq. They're taking this kind of acting with impunity. And if we don't bring charges, if charges aren't brought against these people, it just opens the door for them to carry on. The same manner.
It's always surprising that you don't. I mean, I'm surprised that this is not as big as it. And the other mainstream media, corporate media, isn't covering this story as much. I haven't seen it. To be fair, I kind of avoid the corporate media quite often.
But I haven't even seen it on Twitter that much.
Yeah,
Twitter, everything comes out on Twitter eventually.
Yeah,
when it's been covered in the generally, or from what I've seen, it's quite often covered in the context of these charges shouldn't be brought against soldiers. So there's people like Boris Johnson who have been saying it would be outrageous if and of course they're protecting their own. This is. If the charges aren't brought, it's another case of the state closing ranks and protecting its own, covering up. I mean, Bloody Sunday, Ballymurphy. I wrote about the Miami show band killings as well. I mean, there's a whole host of these kind of cases. Some of the others show some very murky dealings between the British state and loyalist paramilitary gangs in operating in the north of Ireland, where. Think of people like the Glenane gang who were carrying out murders of Catholics and an Irish nationalists. Leading members were allegedly members of the British intelligence or double agents for the British intelligence services. So a lot of these, this could open the door into some very, very dark areas for the British state and their involvement and collusion with the killing of people during that period and beyond as well.
Well, it's one of the things I found surprising that really not until I started working here about 3 years ago, I wasn't really aware. I remember growing up knowing about the IRA and being terrified of the IRA. I remember coming to London as a kid and trains would stop me and think, "Fuck, the IRA have blown something up."
Dude,
but then since I started working here, I wasn't even aware that there were paramilitaries on the loyalist or whatever they're called side, the side that's loyal to Britain. I didn't even know they existed. The crimes that they committed are not they're not brought to light as much as the things that the IRA did.
Yeah,
but
they're very well known in Ireland, by the way.
I know, yeah, I'm sure it is
in Ireland. But of course, the British state and their organs have a of course they want to cover this kind of thing up. They don't want their role in what happened in that period to be exposed. Of course, they've got a history going right back to the occupation, the Black and Tans. You can talk about the Black and Tans and some of the horrendous crimes that they committed, opening fire on a crowd watching a Gaelic football match and killing players during at Croke Park, for example, killing people because they wouldn't pronounce they wouldn't speak in English or say their names in English, and sort of banning the Irish language and culture and this kind of thing. And of course in the north of Ireland, carrying out allegedly colluding with with these loyalist paramilitaries and carrying out these state killings or these or killings of Catholics or Irish nationalists. And, these people were trained. They've got a history of doing this in operations in other in other countries. So it makes sense that they're going to replicate that in the north of Ireland. And let's remember, British troops are an occupying force. Ireland is not their country, so they're there as an occupying force, and people have resisted that in one form or another. But it's a typical kind of British divide and conquer.
Exactly.
That kind of thing. So they fostered these kind of divisions.
One of the things that's really clear as well is that, just to go on about manufacturing consent by Edward Herman and Noam Chomsky again, that there's victims of crimes committed by our enemies are always people. They're always brought to light. These stories always come out, and there's lots of attention given to them. People killed by the West are own people. You never hear about them. They get completely ignored. Northern Ireland people, it's just not
the north of Ireland.
Apologies, the north of Ireland.
What is the reason for you separating the term North of Ireland to Northern Ireland?
That is quite an interesting question.
Pardon my ignorance on this topic, but just kind of wondering.
Because some people don't recognise Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland is part of Ireland, so we call it the North of Ireland because Northern Ireland's a British construct. It's an occupied, it's the occupied 6 counties that actually belong to the people of Ireland and not Britain. Obviously, Northern Ireland is part of Britain, but it's not recognised as such by some people.
Okay.
And what's interesting, you've probably noticed, and whoever's listening to this may have noticed that any stories about the North of Ireland or Northern Ireland are not on the home pages; they're always on the international pages.
Yeah.
Why is that, Steve?
Yeah.
Because the North of Ireland and Ireland is its own country. It's not part of Britain, and we don't recognise it as part of Britain. So that's why it appears on the international pages as international news.
Okay, I think we should move on. That's a very interesting and very deep story. Hopefully, we'll find out more about that.
Well, hopefully tomorrow is. This has been a long. Just to finish, it's been a long road for the people and the victims and the survivors and the relatives of those killed on Bloody Sunday. This has taken years and years, so we have to salute them for their perseverance in their fight for justice, because this has gone on for nearly 50 years, and the families, the victims, everybody involved has been smeared, has been targeted by the state and the press, and the whole machinery has been against them. But they've persevered, they've carried on the struggle, and there's been some fantastic support for them that has helped press and push this. So they to even get to the Savile inquiry, which took 12 years, the most expensive. I think it cost £200 million, the most expensive inquiry in history. And to get to this stage now, this is the people are waiting desperately for that news tomorrow. I sincerely hope that justice is served. I sincerely hope that those that killed people on that day in Derry in January 1972, I hope they're held to account, and I hope they're brought to justice.
Excellent. So we'll move on to a slightly less depressing story, although it's still quite depressing. A shocking state of affairs. Kadeem,
Howdy.
what happened on Sunday just gone? Was it Sunday? Yeah, it was Sunday because I was covering the sport.
What didn't happen? I assume you're referring to the idiotic. I'm not going to call them football fans, but the idiotic humans that felt it was okay to run onto the pitch. And
Which game was this?
so it happened in the space of 48 hours. It happened 3 times in 3 different games. Happened, I think it was Friday night in a Rangers game. It also happened Sunday lunchtime between Aston Villa and Birmingham, which was probably the worst case. A fan ran onto the pitch and punched Jack Grealish. So that was probably the worst incident of them all. And then on Sunday evening, Arsenal Man United, a football human, or just a human, to be fair, ran onto the pitch and pushed Chris Smalling. And it seems over the last 18 months, I guess, football tribalism has just got so much worse. Like, so much worse. These guys think it's okay to run onto the pitch and, you know, at first, you get people, you would get people kind of run on the pitch and streak or just run around, and it's like, ha, very funny, and okay, whatever. And there were people saying, you kind of should stop this now because it's going to get worse, While it's all good nature, people run to the pitch and, making a fool of themselves. One day a fan is going to attack a player. And you always kind of think, well, who will be that stupid? Well, seeing people really are
People
that stupid.
will do it, yeah.
And, Jack Grealish and others have kind of said that Grealish is really lucky that the guy didn't have a knife on him or anything. And it goes back to people, knife crime and stuff like that.
But it also, doesn't it go into... I mean, people have been running onto the pitches for years.
Yeah,
I've done it. I'm sure you have.
No, I have not. It's honestly...
Did you streak?
No, I mean, as I don't mean like as an individual, just getting excited and carried away, but on particular victories or at the end of the season, or those kind of things as part of a mass pitch invasion. That kind of thing. But yeah, it's different.
But then they've also argued as well. Don't even do that because if anything, that's even worse because then you have this thousands of people on the pitch, and again, normally it's everyone's happy. You've been promoted, you won a cup. It's all fun. So everyone's shaking hand. They want to take photos.
It's almost expected, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was anyway.
Yeah, but at the same time, all it takes is one
individual. Yeah,
to do something stupid, and again, it's one of those issues where it happens a lot across the globe. And, the FA, English football, has always turned around and gone, well, we don't have this problem because we're better than all of you. It's like, well, now you don't. Now you guys are just as bad as everyone else. And it kind of comes down to how do you tackle it. Now,
yeah, that's the thing, because last time we had you on, what were we talking about last time you were here?
Racism.
And you were talking about one of the things to tackle this would be to deduct points from the teams. Whose fans have caused these things. Do you think that a similar thing should happen here? Like if one of your fans comes onto the pitch and ruins the game, should the team be punished for that as well?
What's really funny is that people discussed that on Sunday with that Jack Grealish thing, and I was in a NFL group chat, but one of the guys did say, well, that will just spark a rival fan running onto the pitch. Yeah. But again, the problem you then get is that you keep on... Like the racism thing, the argument then becomes, well, you might try and self-sabotage. You might try and sabotage another team. It's like, do you know what? I'm kind of past the point of caring, to be honest, because, like, if I'm a Man United fan, am I really going to run onto the pitch and punch Paul Pogba to try and get Man City points deducted? No, I'm not, because, like, to me, it's not that deep. And yeah, there might be someone else who's going to do it, but... You try and punch Paul Pogba, like, he's probably going to want to punch you back and stuff like that. And
but you're also likely to be identified as an individual that's caught doing something like that.
And the thing is, with these situations as well, is that your football fandom, the team you support, everyone kind of knows who you support, be it via Facebook or stuff like that. If I go on the pitch and punch Paul Pogba, I'm sure there will be loads of people that will be like, you're a Man United fan, what are you doing?
Exactly.
The guy that punched Jack Grealish, there were people on his Facebook going, "What are you doing?" Like, and one thing that was quite depressing is that as they led this guy off the pitch, the Birmingham fans cheered him, and that's the problem. To them, they're just like, well, when he's going to get a ban, but the game's going to continue, and it's all good. If the situation was, or if the punishment was, actually we're going to deduct points, he's not getting cheered. There's no way the fans are cheering. If anything, they'll be like, pass them on to us and we're going to give them a right kicking. And like the racism issue, I do think there needs to be a zero tolerance to this. Because then the next time this happens, he might not have, it might just be a fit, it might be something else. And then what? And last time ban, chucked the guy in prison, but someone might have died. I'm sorry, but everyone's like, oh, why are you so extreme? Because we are... I'm not saying we're in extreme times, but football is becoming so dark and disgusting. There's a Huddersfield player at the moment. You're talking about a fan sent him an Instagram message. I think he called him a monkey or something like that. And it's just like, why would you do that for? Yeah, someone messaged him saying, "Leave our fucking club. I never want to see you in a town kit ever again. You useless wannabe black donkey." This is meant to be a Huddersfield fan messaging a Huddersfield player. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, we just in a time where people just think that they can get away with anything because, yeah, you'll probably get a caution and a lifetime ban, but the problem is just going to keep on getting worse. Start deducting points, and it might not solve everything, but it can solve quite a lot.
I mean, it's really strange that for someone who's not really that into football, it's really strange to see the tribalism, how strong it is in football. I remember reading that, you know, with deindustrialization in this country, a lot of men felt like they kind of lost their reason to live, and one of the things that gave them, meaning was football, and then so this kind of drove this tribalism. That could be a load of shit.
There was a correlation, wasn't there, between crime rates in certain areas and the success of the local football team. They go up and down in relation to.
I think in some
fascinating.
In some countries, it's like it's sport in general. It's like when Manny Pacquiao used to box, the entire country was just watching box. Like, he was that much of a legend. Yeah. It's with some football teams, when the national team plays, literally crime stops. All they care about is watching that team win, and that's how serious it is. And I think we spoke about austerity before. If you're going through a really shit time, but you manage to somehow get a season ticket to your team, that Saturday 3 till 5, nothing else matters. Yeah. Your marriage, your kids, your job, nothing matters. All that matters is being around people that share, a common, you're all there together wanting something to happen. And I think if you play on that, if you say, well, if you as fans mess up, be it, you attack someone, you be racist, whatever, we're going to punish the team. People are like, well, hold on, don't do that, because you're taking away my enjoyment. You're taking away, you're now punishing me for something someone else did. I'm not going to sit through that. It's Ian White tweeted, I think it was yesterday, a picture of him when he was playing, and these fans, don't know what team he's playing, but these fans look like they're about to kill him. And it says, you're asking stewards on £8.31 an hour to stop these guys from getting onto the pitch.
Well, you've seen I've seen it over the Olympic Stadium. We had that kind of,
what team plays at the Olympic Stadium again?
West Ham. So, but when the stadium move first happened, like back at the Boleyn, you would. Yeah. And I've said this many times, but you would know the stewards there. Yeah. They would know your first name, you would know them, and they would say, all right, yeah. So if there was any kind of low-level silliness, which was generally things like smoking, when you shouldn't be smoking, or bringing booze in and having a little, and they'd say, look, leave it out. And then, because they would know and respect it, like, yeah, all right, okay. The move over to the new stadium happens, and then they've got these kind of, probably on minimum wage, 18-year-olds who've never done a football match before, no experience, they were annoying people. And that's when you start getting these kind of incidents kind of occurred over the new ground. It was completely unsafe. It was it's not set up for football. But there were clashes between West Ham fans and whatever their rival fans.
It was every game. It happened at Chelsea game. I spoke to someone this morning, and they raised a really good point. Funnily enough, if you see the level of security, just say like Tottenham's training ground, to protect their players, you then see the level of security inside the stadium. It's like, well, hold on, you're hiring like private firms to make sure that no one runs into your training ground or does anything, and yet why are you doing the same at a stadium when, if anything, it's a lot easier to get into the pitch? Like, again, let's be honest, the fans outnumber the stewards. I don't even know the ratio. If three or four fans like, you know what, we're going to go in and kick the shit out of Harry Kane, you're not stopping them. As with the Jack Grealish thing, before Stewart was nowhere near the guy by the time we got to Jack Grealish, and Grealish is fortunate that the punch kind of knocked him down, because he could have got 2 or 3 punches, or even tried to kick him while he's on the floor and stuff like that. I think, what probably needs to happen is that teams need to pay a better wage, 100%, but also give these guys some kind of proper training. And I'm not quite sure if offence is the answer, but maybe in the short term, just some kind of netting or offence. Because again, you see it in a lot of stadiums, across Europe, to stop people from getting onto the pitch. And the one thing they always say, is the atmosphere in certain grounds are amazing, but you will see those fences and stuff like that. Now, again,
You can't go back to those days, though. I mean, that was the days. I remember going to football matches then, and that was.
We're talking about the 80s.
We're talking about the 80s, and yeah, we are talking about that period of time when I was a kid, but
I wasn't born.
all right, okay. I was a kid though, and I was going to football matches, and it was about how they treated working class people. They they penned us in. They had these fences up to allegedly to stop us going on the pitch or whatever. It didn't work. That was my first time on the pitch. I climbed over one of them.
Yeah, I don't think they could really hold. I've seen a man literally rip a seat from underneath himself out of anger. Yeah. I don't think a fence is really going to stop someone who really wants to get from
but it was. I think it was then. This is the height of Thatcherism. Thatcher hated football fans because they epitomised the worst of the working class for her, and she treated everybody like they as though they were mindless thugs, and there was the whole thing about bringing ID cards and that kind of thing. We don't want to go down that route, I don't think. And bringing back that kind of fences and that kind of thing. I don't personally. I think that's the wrong
and the thing is, I don't really want to see fences, but on the flip side is that something needs to give. And the thing is, they have tried to give the Football Association and the police credit. They've tried moving games. Like this Aston Villa Birmingham game was Sunday at 12 o'clock, so there's not much pre-drink time.
No.
So they move games as early as possible to stop it from happening. Fans, listen, they're now saying that if anything, just don't sell alcohol in stadiums at all, because even if you're not drinking before the game, when you get to the game, you're going to have 3 or 4 pints, and
Is alcohol the driving factor though?
Hell no.
Or is it people are idiots?
Yeah, it's weird because, okay, you talk about the Olympic Stadium. If a fan tries to get onto the pitch, the space between the fans and the pitch is so far. He'll be out of breath by the time he gets there.
And it's true, there's a whole running track in the way. But,
So is that a possible...
No.
It's not, but it's... Again, I don't think they're going to deduct points, because... You start deducting points, and the B teams don't even think about taking 3 points from us when we're trying to win a league, or stuff like that. So then, what do you do? And you don't want to go back to the fence around the stadium. You don't want to do that. But what is it? Something. My answer is, again, deduct points. That's my answer at the moment. If anyone can think of something that will actually work and is easier to implement, I guess, then by all means, let's speak about it. But yeah, like I said previously, perhaps paying the stewards more money, making it a full-time job with actual training. Yeah, maybe.
I imagine that would go a long way, because if I was being paid less than minimum wage or whatever, there's no way I would put myself in front of those men.
No offense, If I'm standing there as me right now, even you give me £20 an hour, and there's a big, massive guy standing opposite me, and he goes, I'm gonna run the pitch and punch shit out so I'm like, listen, well, you do what you gotta do, because I'm not getting my face punched in. It's that simple. Go chance it, because you're gonna get a ban. And when they ask me what happened, I'm like, dude, you overpowered me. Did you not see the size of him? So,
right. Well. This is another thorny topic. Quite an interesting one. I think we should stop that one there. And normally, at this stage in the podcast, we have a ridiculous question for us to debate over. Anyone got a ridiculous question they can ask?
Don't know, but I saw a new Easter egg this morning.
Oh, the cheese one.
The cheese Easter egg.
Cheesy Easter egg. I really want one. Yeah. Yes
I
or
did
no?
see
Cheesy
that.
Easter egg.
A cheese Easter egg. I mean, I like the idea of a big block of cheese, but a cheese Easter egg just feels a bit
Isn't
gross.
that just a big baby bell, though?
Could just be a big baby bell. I mean, it just feels a bit like it'd be gross and sweaty. Because do you keep them in the fridge, Easter eggs?
Well, they don't last long enough to be kept in the fridge, do they?
No, well, no, they're not.
Oh no, I keep it in the fridge.
See, I usually smash an Easter egg straight away, but it's gone within minutes.
Yeah. Same.
A cheese Easter. I mean, I love cheese. I just don't know. I'm going to say no. I don't want a cheese Easter egg. What about you, Jared?
I don't think it's not really sounding too appetising to me.
Do you like
It's called
cheese?
it's
I
called
like
a-
cheese, but like you said, this is the idea of an egg-shaped cheesy.
It's called a Cheester egg.
cheese.
Cheester egg.
Oh my god, that's horrible.
I don't know. Just feel like it'll be like really sticky to eat, or I don't know.
I can imagine it being sweaty and
Yeah,
horrible. It just tastes.
yeah, it's just
and it would
weird.
probably be gross cheese, like really mega processed
So
cheese.
no, it's not actually. It's like it's a nice, good cheese. Cheddar cheese, 120 grams of cheddar cheese, sourced from Lancashire farms, and it comes with a packet of oat cakes and a sachet of chutney.
Sounds pretty
that
good,
sounds
that
pretty
was
good,
like-
doesn't
You
it?
are asking for people to buy literally a cheese Easter egg and a bottle of wine and just go to town on a Friday night. You know, a bit of Netflix, a bit of cheese Easter eggs. You know,
I don't know if that's going to work. Netflix and cheese Easter egg.
I don't know.
I don't know.
What do
You
you
know.
think?
I don't know. It worked for me.
Would it? Would it get
Yeah.
you round?
What?
Would it get you round? I didn't say what you thought I said.
People will happily, you know, get their cheese board out and then blah blah blah.
I do like a cheese board though.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but they're like reasonably sized and shaped cheeses. I don't know.
Wembley Stadium do a really nice cheese board
What?
press. Wembley Stadium.
See, that what kind of makes me hate what's happening to football. That you can get a cheese board at a football stadium.
You hate people washing their hands at football stadiums.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah. That should be the question. Is it weird for grown men to queue and watch their hands at a football stadium?
Yes,
Why?
it's wrong. It's wrong.
Are you-
I went to watch. It was when I went to watch Arsenal at the Emirates. They were a crunch time against Bayern Munich. The crowd was flat. I went to the. It was the most middle class football experience I've ever had.
Because they
Apart
wash
from the
their
new
hands.
stadium now, where they've served
So you're
chicken
saying
goujons.
washing hands is a middle
But there was a
class?
queue. There was just a queue. You're going to going to the toilet. There was a big queue. At West Ham, people used to be queuing to wait to go into the toilet. So 4 grown men would come out of a cubicle. They'd been smoking fags and probably doing coke or something as well, and doing drugs and that kind of thing. All right. There was never a queue at the basins. Men would wee in the basins, right? Because there was.
You're not painting a good picture. Do you know what?
This is.
I have to
but
ask.
what I'm saying is, it was like a. And then I went back to my seat after this ridiculous queue to wash
your hands.
which I didn't do. I hold my hands.
Oh, never say touching you.
I didn't wee on them. I did not wee on my
I don't
hands.
care. You
I
just
didn't wee on them. Why?
the point.
It doesn't matter. I carry hand thing anyway. But anyway, I went back up to sit in the seat, and at half time during a football match, a European Champions League match, the 2 men in front of us were talking about ISAs and PEPs and this great new banking app that they found. Right?
Was
It
this 5 years
an
ago?
Experience. I don't know if it was 5. Yeah, it's a few years ago.
I'll tell you why.
Could be. Yeah, could be.
If this is the case, this would be really interesting. I worked at an Arsenal Bayern Munich game, putting out this display on the seats. It was 5 years ago. It's where I met. Listen, it's where I met Claire for the People's Assembly, who told me about the Morning Star sports job, which she then passed on to Mark Perryman, who then passed it on to Richard Bagley, the editor, and I got that job. I've been there 5 years, and it could be from that Arsenal Bayern Munich game where people wash their hands. So well done, people.
It wasn't actually that game because
That sounds like a good time to end this podcast. Right, so Ceren, if people would like to find you on social media, where can they do it?
You can find me on Twitter at Ceren Cardelan.
You're gonna have to spell it.
Oh,
'cause
No, I don't want to do this after every. Oh, just.
You have to.
no one can spell Ceren. That's the problem.
It's with a C. That's all the clues I'm giving.
Okay.
You can do a little research.
They can figure it out. They can go on the Morning Star and find how to
Yeah,
spell.
exactly. If you check out one of my articles in the Morning Star, then it's there.
I bet you
Well, it's
Kadeem.
not
Why?
because your Morning Star.
Oh,
byline
it's
is
my
different.
real surname, and
Yeah.
it's my surname's not on my social media.
You have strange surnames. They'll figure it out.
I'll figure it out.
You can find me on Twitter at Kadeem Simmonds, or Miss Simmonds with a D, SIMMONDS.
Excelente.
God, not that again.
Steve Sweeney.
No, yeah, mine's at Sweeney Steve. That's SWEENEY STEVE.
And I'm at Colsey, which is COWLESZ. Cool. Shall we finish here then?
Yep.